So let's carry on with the exotics. Today we're looking at SMGs and shotguns. So we're just going to crack straight on with it in no particular order. First up is Backfire. Backfire is an exotic MPX. It has the talent Payment in Kind. Dealing damage to an enemy adds 1 stack of critical hit damage. Stacks last for 10 seconds and are capped at 200, meaning there's max cap is 200% critical hit damage. On reload, applies a bleed for 10 seconds on yourself, which deals 0.5% armor damage per stack. This is up to 100% armor damage. Secondary attribute is 12.5% magazine size, optic 5% crit chance, magazine plus 20 rounds, muzzle 5% critical hit damage, and the underbarrel is 10% stability. Now this weapon is actually incredibly, and I mean incredibly powerful. It's actually a runner-up for one of the top DPS weapons, period. If you were to make a decent full-on DPS build and put Backfire on it, you can do some insane damage. There is just one glaring issue: it tries to kill you. Building around the bleed, although will be immense damage, it will either mean that you die a lot or you're going to need someone following you around healing you constantly. If you build for the bleed, as in adding in some bleed resist, some hazard protection, etc, you will essentially be tanking your entire build just to use this weapon, at which point it becomes middle tier SMG at best, and there are other better options. The one saving grace for this weapon is just the simple fact that if you use this during Golden Bullet, you basically become god tier regardless of what build you have. Killing enemies reloads the magazine, and then from there you can just continually fire to build up stacks and not have to worry about the bleed. There are some interesting mechanics we can use aside from just having a healer or having a bleed resist build that allows us to utilize the weapon, such as using the Ninja Bite knee pads. Using the cover to cover allows us to reload the weapon without actively reloading the weapon, therefore negating the entire purpose of the bleed. We can also start the reload animation and then swap weapon. This will also negate the bleed, but it will also remove all of the stacks you have built up, essentially meaning at no point can you actually go more or higher than 55 stacks on the weapon. I personally feel that there should be a caveat added to the talent that if you're able to kill an enemy, it will negate the bleed by 100%. So killing one enemy per mag is all you'd have to do to completely remove the bleed. If you don't kill an enemy per mag, you will get hit with the full force of the bleed. Maybe I just want this because I'm absolutely desperate to utilize this weapon, however I can never find an actual decent purpose for it because it is either absolutely lacking due to having to build around the bleed, or no one wants to follow me around being a healer. Up next we have Chatterbox, Incessant Chatter. When you reload, fire rate is increased by 20% for each enemy within 15 meters for the duration of the magazine. The max stack on this fire rate is 5, which means you're able to get a 100% or doubling your RPM, and your kills refresh 50% of your magazine. Secondary attribute is critical hit damage, optic is 15% critical hit chance, magazine is plus 10 rounds, muzzle is 5% critical hit damage, and the underbarrel is 10% weapon handling. This is an incredibly underrated SMG. I know a lot of people love it, I know a lot of people hate it. Now the annoying thing is just to put this into some form of perspective, if we were able to change the secondary attribute from critical hit damage to damage to targets out of cover, this would be the absolute top tier SMG regardless of what you are running. It would near enough become one of the meta weapons overall, in tier with Regulus. It is just that damn powerful. The RPM buff is actually a direct multiplier to DPS, so if we're able to hit, for example, making numbers up here, but if we're able to hit 9 million DPS with the weapon itself, utilizing Incessant Chatter to get that 100% increase in RPM will take us from 9 million to 18 million. It really is that powerful in terms of RPM. Then just having the kills refresh the magazine by 50%. As long as you've got a good build and you're able to keep damage going, you essentially have infinite ammo, a stupid amount of RPM, and you can just keep killing, negating one of the biggest killers in the game, which is reload. As it stands right now within the current meta, Chatterbox is a pretty weird one. If you don't have the RPM buff, it is a pretty lackluster low tier SMG and is barely able to hold its own. With the RPM buff, with the talent, the only SMG that actively beats it is going to be Dark Winter while you have Perfect Killer active. That is literally it. And the only reason that happens is because we can put damage to targets out of cover on Dark Winter. Lady Death. Lady Death is an exotic CMMG Banshee. The talent is Breathe 3. While moving, gain 4 stacks per second and 8 stacks if you're sprinting, up to 32 stacks. Each round fired consumes a stack, amplifying damage by 75%. Kills grant 20% movement speed for 10 seconds. Secondary attribute is 6% damage to armor, optic 10% crit chance, magazine 10% reload speed, muzzle 5% critical hit damage, and the underbarrel for some dumb reason is 500% melee damage. Gonna upset people here. The only thing that makes this weapon even remotely viable is going to be the buff on it. The buff only applies to the rounds you have in the magazine while the buff is active, meaning you can have no more than 32, even if you increase the magazine size by use of True Patriot, 3-piece Brazos, or some weird concoction between the two with Ninja Byte Backpack. It doesn't matter, you cannot have more than a 32 round buff. And it is because of this, and only having 32 rounds in the magazine, where this weapon falls short. While you have the buff active on those bullets, it's great. You will do some serious damage, but it is impossible to keep the buff up for prolonged periods of time, especially engaging in a longer firefight, such as longer missions or doing some rather strenuous open world activities. The moment you run out of buff, you're not able to instantly regain it, and there still be enemies alive, you are literally better off with any other SMG. This weapon does have a serious presence within the PvP community, simply just because they're taking out one enemy at a time, and with the amount of chicken dance that they do running around in a circle, they're able to maintain the buff. That's basically it. And the final nail on the coffin is just that weird melee attachment. Melee in this game for us basically does 0, so having a melee attachment, even if it's a 500% increase, means 0 times 500% is still 0. So we kind of already have a dead attachment, which is not going to help the weapon in any way, shape or form. Moving into the shotguns, we have Lullaby or Sweet Dreams. They both do the exact same thing. It is an exotic Spaz 12. They both have the talent Sandman. Melee attacks instantly kill non-elite enemies and has a cooldown of 15 seconds. Secondary attribute is damage to targets out of cover, optic is 15% accuracy, magazine 15% reload speed, and underbarrel is the 25% optimal range. Honestly, the most powerful thing about this shotgun is going to be that 25% optimal range. This weapon is an absolute favourite among healer and CC players, simply just because we're able to foam a red or a purple and then melee them to spread the foam, or if we're a healer and we're getting pushed and we have this weapon on us, as long as it's not an elite, we can mostly look after ourselves. Sadly, this is falling out of favour by quite a bit, simply just due to the addition of Perfect Opportunistic, which allows us to basically use any shotgun to look after ourselves, and we can also now deal with elites. This weapon does still have a few uses in a few niche scenarios, such as within speedrunning and having to deal with 3 ads very quickly. Just get 3 people to put Sweet Dreams on and show me on the NPC where the priest touched you. In terms of damage, this weapon is actually quite severely lackluster, although it is a shotgun, so comparing DPS on shotguns is like comparing tonnage on nuclear warheads. It is going to hurt regardless. The issue is there are going to be better options for those scenarios where you really need this weapon. The truth is this weapon only really comes into use under very niche circumstances of where you need to instantly kill a non-elite NPC. A good example of this is going to be the Iron Horse raid with Lieutenant Grey. The 3 shield bastards that come out are all purples. There's 3 of them. How can we deal with them quickly and easily, especially if you're playing in a team that doesn't run a Regulus? Yeah, this is where Sweet Dreams comes in. That's it. Then last but certainly not least is Scorpio, an exotic 612. Talent is Septic Shock. Shooting a target applies stacks of venom. These stacks will last for 10 seconds, increasing the stacks adds more severe debuffs to the target. 1 stack is poison, 3 disorient, 6 shock, and at 7 stacks targets take 20% amplified damage from all sources. Duration of the status effect is based on the percentage of bullets on hitting the target. Secondary attribute is 10% critical hit damage, optic 10% crit chance, magazine 10% reload speed, muzzle is 10% stability, and underbarrel is 10% weapon handling. Now, it's generally quite easy to spot an end game player simply just because their first statement will be "I hate Scorpio." Scorpio can be an absolute nuisance and it can cause some serious problems in a variety of team setups. Other than that, it is a very solid gun. It is most prominently used on healer and CC builds, simply just because with the CC and some pretty decent DPS, adding in perfect opportunistic, or the Eclipse backpack for amplified damage, it allows CC players and healer players alike to look after themselves completely, up to and including legendary, as long as they don't get hit with more than one enemy at a time. It is easy to see why this weapon is a favourite among the more casual players. Just go to any countdown and you will see a sea of Scorpio shots. It becomes a cacophony of the shot sound, or shock, or enemies being disoriented like they've had one too many tequilas. It is a very prominent and powerful weapon, and it will serve you well throughout the majority of your gameplay, either in group or in solo. It is a very good weapon. The only issue with this weapon is in more organised, higher end groups, such as raids or some legendary missions, Scorpio is just going to cause more issues than it's actually worth. It's nothing more annoying than trying to line up a headshot and then someone comes along and goes, "Haha, Scorpio shock." Yeah, it's irritating. What you took 30 seconds to do, I could have done in 1 second. It's also been very much noted, and this also goes for St. Elmo's, is in the raid the shock has an interesting mechanic with some of the bosses or the internal mechanics of the raid itself, and causes a lot of things to bug out, which is one of the reasons why when we take new players through the raid we typically ask to leave the Scorpio and the St. Elmo's in the box. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. We have covered SMGs, shotguns, next we have rifles, and then MMRs. Might also just tack pistols on there as well, just to get them done. So yeah, that is going to be it for this video. Have fun, good luck, don't die. Bad for the health.